So you might be asking yourself, what does all this have to do with the citizens, the citizenship, and the bonds of the system? Well, it's pretty simple actually to explain. During the process of bonding, it means that they separate the de facto corporate fiction from the de jure living being, and they hold you responsible for the debts of the de facto corporate fiction. Now, this is a whole Rothschild scam, a Red Shield Corporation scam, along with partnership with the three city-states. So what happened is when they went down to Antarctica and discovered all of these new civilizations and technology, and they really started to work that program intensively, you guys fell victim to the biggest scam that was ever created. You have to look at this from the perspective of ego-driven narcissistic lunatics. Remember, these are scientists and researchers, and most of these people were already responsible for committing the biggest genocides on the planet. And we're talking about the Holocaust, World War I, World War II, and now it's conveniently trying to kick off another one, World War III. So if you were supposedly representing all of humanity and you had the power and the jurisdiction to be there as so-called representatives because the people allow you to operate and allow you to do so in that sense, you're keeping all of this technology for yourselves and you're holding it for yourself and then holding the people as slaves. But how they get you is they keep you classified inside of your own nations. So if you're Canada, you'd have a Canada passport. From the US, you'd have a US passport. France, you'd have a France passport. And you're not allowed to leave those nations without a passport. Does hand me your papers, show me your papers sound familiar to everyone? See, you all are under this impression that the Allies won the war, but isn't it a little interesting that you actually don't have any freedoms? You actually have to show your papers everywhere you go. The Nazis didn't lose the war. They just transmuted. The Third Reich never ended. It just transmuted. They literally control. The German Jews of Frankfurt, Germany actually control the entire world. The Nazi Empire never died. They had possession of everything in existence here. So in order to pull this huge Ponzi scheme off and hold the general public responsible for it, they create this creditor debt-based system, and they get you to believe that you're borrowing money from the banks to be able to live your life. The illusion and the indoctrination is that you're supposed to believe in something outside of yourself. You're supposed to worship something outside of yourself. Most of you get up and you go to work every day, you collect a paycheck, you pay a shit ton of taxes, you go out and you get a mortgage loan, you get a vehicle loan, you get student loans for college educations, you sink yourself so far into debt in order to live this illusionary life that they present to you as being the white picket fence or the American dream. Meanwhile, what you don't know is, and this is private central banking 101, they actually take your blank endorsement. When you walk into a bank as an unsecured creditor or operating from the public perspective, you walk into that bank and they pretend to bring up your credit score. They sell your blank endorsement or your credit search to the private central bankers. The private central bankers pay the Schedule 1, 2, and 3 banks the exact amount, whether you receive it or not. You might be denied your credit, but they actually receive it. The private international banks make 19 times the value back off every blank endorsement that they contract and sell out on the international market. That's why most mortgages and all allodial title or land assets are actually converted securities or fixed income securities that are actually done with the private central bankers. That's why the Crown owns all of the allodial titles or mineral rights in the Commonwealth. So the big Ponzi scheme here is this. They turn you into a citizen. They get you with the record of live birth. They convert that into a birth certificate for the province or the state that you belong to. That birth certificate is then your banknote, which is converted on the international market with places like Fidelity, and they trade the bonds on the international market on your part, and you're never supposed to know it. You believe that you're operating as a patriot or a citizen of a nation, but that's your only reason you're on a citizenship is so that you are responsible for paying the debt back for this loan at interest that was created from nothing or from your blank endorsement. Remember, you guys are the actual creditors of this reality. You were born free, but sold into slavery. How it works is this. They sell your blank endorsement on the international market. They make 19 times back the value, and then the Schedule 1, 2, and 3 banks that operate nationally charge you a loan at interest and pay back the loan that you think you borrowed. But really, the money that was created, this currency that was created from your unlimited source of credit, was done through the blank endorsement through a promissory note system to the Federal Reserve or the fractional reserve banking system. If you're in Canada, it would be with the Bank of Canada. Now you're starting to see the connection of why Mark Carney was brought in from the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England in this time. So we'll fast forward a little bit, and the general public basically started catching on to the entire Ponzi scheme, and people started waking up to this entire deal. They really started to figure out what was going on behind the scenes with the fractional reserve banking. And people that were on the inside started switching sides and started disclosing some of the truth about what was actually happening behind the scenes. And when all of this started to come out, it started to really start to produce these sovereignty communities and freedom movements and these people that were moving against the system. But even that perspective that they were using about moving against the system was still a little bit convoluted. They were still getting the actual information confused because they were only accepting partial pieces of the information. They could not accept the entire matrix as a whole. So they didn't really have all of the information. And that was done because of the security agreements that were put in place with matters of national security or a security interest abroad with all the different nations. And this is why today we have organizations like the United Nations, and we have the World Health Organization, we have the World Economic Forum, and so on and so forth, and the General Security Council. And this is an absolute 100% world domination stakeholder 2030 agenda program. The World Economic Forum, under the guise, listen, Klaus Schwab is the leader of the World Economic Forum. He's a Nazi. His whole family were Nazis. That's history. That's proven. Nobody can deny that. And he's the guy that's leading that entire infrastructure forward. He's trying to bring everybody into that entire program. This is why the Vatican actually listed Klaus Schwab as universal bishop, because you can't call a German Jew a Catholic. So for those of you that don't know, that, again, another connection in the system is the German Jews of Frankfurt, Germany were listed, like they listed Klaus Schwab as universal bishop. If you understand the game, you know that the word Catholic literally translates to the word universal. And this literally goes back to controlling the bonds. So now you're starting to see why Canada is such an important tool on the board right now, and why they want to force some sort of transaction or war via proxy between the Crown and, again, the sovereign nation of the United States. As Trump has taken over, he's starting to make some serious moves in moving everything back to the old ways, back to the gold standard, and which is exactly how the nation should be operating. Fiat currency is actually very fraudulent. It's created from nothing, from the debtors, but you don't get to keep that. If the private central bankers would only disclose to the people the exact process instead of hiding it so that they could, keep all of their assets for themselves, you guys would have been free a long time ago. But they won't do this. They want to fulfill their prophecies and their agendas and their narratives that they've created throughout the system. So in the next part, I will explain why Canada is so important to the rest of the world. You Canadians have no idea what it is that you're sitting on. You have no idea how important this landmass is to the future of all of commerce and to the rest of the world, and why you are all such a big target, and why the entire world is focused directly on you as we speak. See you in the next part.